Howdy folks, my name is Tripp Watson and I'm an entrepreneur attorney. Today we're going to be talking about shutting down shop. Unfortunately, while we're doing this, it's in the middle of COVID. So a lot of companies are seriously considering shutting down permanently. There's a lot of mistakes that you can make in this process, so the point of this video is to assist you with some of the questions that you should be asking yourself and giving you an idea of the factors that go into shutting down the business and what your options are. Now, this is broken up into several different parts, so each individual part is designed to look at something specific, and they're designed to go in a progression. So I would recommend that you watch one after the other, but they're designed to be short and sweet so that you can understand what's going on. The very first part that we're going to be talking about today as far as shutting down shop is going to be the decision about whether or not you should even shut down shop. And this is a very complicated question. It's a very fact-intensive question. It's a difficult question because there's a lot of emotions that go into deciding whether or not to close a business in the first place. One of the biggest things that I can recommend is from the very get-go, recognize that there is sunk cost that doesn't factor into your business. We as entrepreneurs, we as business owners often attach a lot of pride to the businesses that we run. And so it's very important to distance yourself from the pride element and look solely at a dollars and cents calculation of it. But one of the biggest calculations that you have is what's called the sunk cost fallacy, which is the idea that I've spent so much time building this business, making it successful, that it's worth something simply because I've invested that time and money into it. And that's not right. That's not the best way to approach whether or not you should shut down your business, because that sunk cost doesn't have any actual value. Just because your 78 Trans Am used to run an amazing 0 to 60 time doesn't mean that it's worth anything today. If it's sitting on blocks in the front yard and it doesn't run, it's really not worth anything, no matter how good it was back in the day. So what we typically look at when we look at the decision to close down a business is one of two things. We look at its cash flow, and we look at its assets versus its liabilities, its book value. So first off, if you have positive cash flow and you're making money on a month-to-month basis or on an annual basis, the question about whether or not you should shut down your business is fairly simple. You probably shouldn't. If you're making money, then that's the best scenario. Obviously, if you're losing money, and you look out and you see that you could be losing money for the foreseeable future, then that's one of the questions that you should look at on whether or not you're closing your business. Now, the second side of it is more difficult, is the book value of the business. And what we specifically look at on the book value is your assets, the assets that the company has, whether those be hard assets, things that you can hit with a hammer, or the company's contracts can actually be assets, whether or not those exceed the liabilities. So if you owe a bunch of money to a bank, if you've got a judgment against your company, or if you have any other obligations to anybody else that might pop up as a liability in those categories, then if that exceeds the amount of assets that your company has, then what you have is what's called a negative book value. And book value is very simple. Any accountant can run a book valuation, or you can pull up QuickBooks right now and take a look at your balance sheet. And if the statement of owner's equity is negative in QuickBooks, then you have a negative asset value inside of your own company. Now, obviously, in the best case scenario, you have a company that is cash flow positive. You've got a company that has positive assets. That's your best and your highest. Now, obviously, your worst case scenario is you have negative assets and you have negative cash flow. But if you're one of the others, whether you have a positive asset value but negative cash flow, basically you have a bunch of assets, you're just not making money right now. Or if you have negative assets, negative equity inside your company, but positive cash flow, these are much more fact-intensive questions. I should highly recommend speaking to a lawyer, an accountant, financial advisor about whether or not you should shut down your business in these circumstances. If your company has sufficient assets so that it doesn't necessarily need to float cash flow for right now, then you can potentially get through a bad spot in your business. However, if your company has negative assets but positive cash flow, you might be what's called the valley of death, where you don't have enough cash to get you through and make you profitable at the end of the day. So those are more complex questions, and so I'd highly recommend speaking to somebody that can talk to your specific scenario. But generally speaking, if you have negative liabilities and or if you have negative assets and you have negative cash flow, then you need to seriously think about the steps to close down your business. Now, the next thing that we're going to be talking about are the specific legal options that you have to shut down your business and to see what types of recourses that you have in different circumstances. So we'll look forward to seeing you next week. And this is Tripp Watson, entrepreneur attorney for the Watson firm.